We'd like to welcome our guests today. We have Josh and Doug from Limited Run Games. Welcome, guys.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh.
Hi, and I'm Doug.
We are really happy to have you guys join us for a little bit of discussion here. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Cyrix. We're going to go ahead and ask you some interesting questions.
Sounds good.
I guess I'm just going to jump right into it. All right. So the first question that we have is that there's not a lot of people in our audience who don't know who you are, but just in case, can you tell us who you are and what LRG is about?
Limited Run Games is a publisher of physical games that previously were digital only. Our whole goal is to preserve games and to help developers make additional revenue on a format that was previously really expensive. So we recently started on Nintendo Switch. We were previously well known for doing PlayStation 4 and Vita titles and a few PC titles. So, yep, that's it in a wrap.
Yeah, the preservation side of it and making developers money is kind of the main goal and drive of the business. We started this back in 2015 when my game development company was running out of money and almost going out of business. It was kind of a Hail Mary, a last effort to try to stay in business. And the plan worked out, and the game that we released actually sold really well, and it saved my development company from going out of business. And I kind of made it my goal at that point to do the same thing for as many other developers as I could.
The development studio kind of brings in the second question is, what is a Mighty Rabbit and why does he need a studio?
So Mighty Rabbit Studios is a game development company that I started back in 2010 to develop Saturday Morning RPG, which is a game that I programmed and designed, which is coming to the Switch next month, in actually, I guess this month, in April, digitally.
Digitally, yeah.
But we'll have it up for pre-order physically next month. The company was named after a pet rabbit that my wife and I had. So I kind of wanted to immortalize him by naming the company after him because he was a fat rabbit. So.
And he gave you a good chance to make a mascot.
Yeah. Who doesn't like rabbits, honestly?
So with Saturday Morning RPG, you had the chance to work with someone by the name of Vince DiCola. Who is Vince DiCola?
So Vince DiCola was the composer of Rocky IV and Transformers, the animated movie. I'm a huge Transformers nerd. I've got a big collection in my office, kind of like an understatement. My off side of the office looks like a toy store. I guess Douglas's does as well. So like
just two different toys.
Yeah, you've got Dragon Ball Z toys all piled up over there, and then I've got Transformers and Star Wars. Vince is an awesome guy, really talented composer that just doesn't get as much work as he deserves. And when I started developing Saturday Morning RPG, I thought like, hey, I'll just take a wild chance and reach out to this guy and ask him if he'll be interested in doing composition. We didn't really have much money. So I thought that he would probably say no. I thought that it was like for sure he'd say no. But to my surprise, he actually came back and said that he would be willing to do the whole soundtrack for the budget we had, which was incredible because I was such a huge fan of his.
That's great. I know Soul's a huge Transformers fan. I'm sure he'll tell you all about that off the air. But you're a long way from the Kickstarter for Saturday Morning RPG and subsequently Breach and Clear. Are there aspects of the early days of Mighty Rabbit that you really miss?
I mean, on one hand, like I miss the like being in one tiny room with 10 people crammed in there. I mean, we were operating out of like a 300 square foot space in my co-founder's basement when we were developing that game. And it was literally like, if you turned around, you'd bump into somebody else because we had 10 people jammed down there. But what I don't miss is constantly being out of money and not knowing where the money was going to come from and the work was going to come from, because that was scary. Honestly, it was very frightening as somebody who had a wife that he needed to take care of and a kid on the way and wanted to buy a house. That side of it sucked, just not having money and not having any kind of financial security or stability.
And you had to pay for that rabbit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that was such a huge expense.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I had to sell a lot of my game collection to fund the early days of development. And I still am very torn up about that because I sold a lot of stuff that, just looking back on it, I
sold stuff that makes me mad.
Yeah. I still feel a lot of pain over it, but it got me to where I am today. So it's a trade-off.
You kind of talk about that Hail Mary pass that sort of landed with Breach and Clear on the Vita. Have you thought about what you would have done if it wasn't for that particular success?
So if we went into doing Breach and Clear like, we were gonna press 1,500 copies of it, and I wanted to do it as a way to like preserve the game. That was kind of one of my angles of it was, if the company's gonna go out of business, I'm gonna take the one thing we released on PlayStation and preserve it so that what we put our blood, sweat, and tears into for the last 2.5 years wasn't lost forever when PSN shut down. So I figured, we're either going to sell out of these and save the company, or we're going to sell 400 copies and go out of business. And I planned for bulldozing the copies, kind of ET style or whatever, if they didn't sell out. Like we were just going to rent a bulldozer, film us running over all the copies that didn't sell, and then I would go bankrupt, and that would have been the end of that story.
Now, after that, you guys kind of rolled into a few excellent things. And I can't imagine what the feeling was like when something like the Oddworld franchise or Octodad became a reality for limited run. What did that feel like?
When Josh told me Oddworld contacted us, I kept thinking he was lying. And like, even when we were close to releasing it, I didn't really think it was real. So for me, it was a huge deal. I'll let Josh say what he thought.
Yeah, it was really legitimizing was the thing. Like we put out Breach and Clear, and I think within like a week of the announcement, like we hadn't even sold Breach and Clear yet. It was like within a week of the announcement, this guy named Peter from Oddworld actually reached out through email and asked like, hey, what are the details? Can we get in on this? And I was like, yes, yeah, it's Oddworld. Like I'd be crazy to say no. So it was surreal. It just was hard to process, and I didn't quite believe it. But it kind of legitimized us right out of the gate because we had only previously done our own games prior to Oddworld. And right after doing our own games, the first third-party release was this massively popular franchise that had been around since '97. So it allowed us to kind of go to other places and say like, hey, we worked with Oddworld, because we were able to take that success with Oddworld. And I was actually sitting at lunch with one of the guys from Epic that was trying to convince my dev studio to use Unreal. And when I told him we were about to do a physical release for Oddworld, he was like, oh man, we need to get on Shadow Complex, like right now. And that was huge for me because Shadow Complex was the first digital game I had ever played where I felt like it needed to be physical. So being able to sit down with this guy from Epic and have him say, like, let's do Shadow Complex because you did Oddworld kind of really drove home how legitimizing working with Oddworld was.
It definitely helped me a lot too, because when we first started, we'd only done Breach and Clear, and I remember going to PSX with a physical copy of it, and people thought I had literally just printed that in my garage, and it wasn't real. And then fast forward to PAX East, I was able to say like, hey, we're releasing Oddworld, and it was a whole different conversation with developers.
And how did that transition into what became Octodad?
Octodad was just one of those games where
that was a case of we had it on our early wish list. It was a game that we really wanted to put out as a physical release, and I think Douglas just approached them, and
I just emailed him, and he was like, okay.
Yeah.
It was one of those like, oh, that was easy. And next thing we knew, we were working with Fangamer to bring out a tie and doing a whole thing about Father's Day with it. It was a lot of fun.
We launched that on Father's Day, which is like, there's no more appropriate day to have launched Octodad.
Yeah.
And we actually did a special edition with a tie, and that became a bit of a nightmare because the tie took about 4 months to get right. So people had to kind of wait 4 months to get their order, and where's my tie became kind of a running joke in the office because we'd get about 15 emails a day asking where my tie was.
Yeah.
I think Adrian, one of the programmers on my dev team, actually had one of his friends come into the office and pretend to be angry, like somebody I'd never seen before, come in and just be like, hey, where's my tie?
Yeah.
And I remember just being like terrified because I thought like, oh, this is it. Random people are going to start walking in off the street asking where their ties are.
I was upset, and then I saw Justin from support filming hiding in the conference room, and I was like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah, this is a joke.
But that wasn't beyond belief, because like when we did a video with Metal Jesus Rocks, we had a fan randomly just show up at our office. So it wasn't hard to believe that somebody would show up looking for their tie.
Yeah.
Well, we know you led the pack on releasing some really cool games on the PS4 and the Vita that otherwise never would have seen a disc or a chip. But you've recently taken the step into the new world by adding Switch to your domain. So how big of a shift of gears was that for your team?
Pun intended.
It was hard to get on board at first because Nintendo, I think, was overwhelmed by the success of the Switch. We met with Damon Baker from Nintendo of America at GDC, and it was literally the day that the Switch released in America. And there is this very keen interest in getting us on the platform then, But when we got back, the whole conversation kind of shifted to like, we're really busy right now. Let's talk again in a few months.
And then we talked to PAX, and then it seemed good, and then we got back and it shifted again.
And then like 8 months later, we were on the platform. I think it was
PAX West that we finally, because they were concerned that we would release too much. And at PAX West, I finally confronted them and answered all their questions. They're like, "Oh, this sounds much better than we were," because they were like, "We're really busy. We can't do as many releases as you're doing on Sony." And we're like, "We don't plan on doing that." So
yeah, it was never our intention to replicate what's going on the PlayStation side, where we have too much. Honestly, our pace on the PlayStation side spawned out of a place of being naive about how many releases we should sign and what kind of games we should sign. So we're still like releasing games that we signed like 2.5 years ago on PlayStation. But on Switch, we're taking a very kind of measured approach. So it's been different in that regard, where we're kind of being very picky on Switch in terms of what we sign.
Yeah, I've seen there's a list on your Wikipedia of games that are potentially being released. And I know I've been salivating for several months for Momodora, which you just did. And I was extremely happy about that because I'm a huge Momodora fan. So I jumped on that when I could. But Thimbleweed Park is the first release you did for the Switch. So what's significant about that choice for each of you?
We're both big fans of Ron Gilbert. He used to play it.
Like Monkey Island, Maniac Mansion.
I was a big LucasArts fan too back in the day.
Yeah, the adventure games. I really, really enjoy them. They hold a special place in my heart. So Thimbleweed Park was a big release for us because we like Ron Gilbert so much. My wife's favorite game is actually The Cave, which Ron Gilbert led development on. So it was cool to be able to work with Ron on doing this release and putting it out, and to have it kind of be such a big success like it was big for us. We're glad that we made a good impression on somebody who kind of has as much cachet in the industry as Ron has.
Yeah.
Thimbleweed was one of the big ones that was recommended in our little community, and people saying they wanted to see. And before we go to the next question, I'm just going to let you know that the cover art you're using for your Thimbleweed looks amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, Fangamer actually kind of helped put that together. They had already done a boxed PC release that I think was intended for the Kickstarter. So we're really good friends with the guys over at Fangamer, and decided that on our Switch releases, when possible, we really wanted to work with them to kind of make collector's editions and box editions that really shine, because we think what they're doing is really top notch. We want to make sure that our Switch releases, not only are they really good games, but we want to make sure that the customer feels like they're getting a good value. So we're including manuals, and we're trying to really push the good cover art and interior art.
Or reversible.
Because we never want people to get a game from us, open it up, and just have it be like a blank white sheet inside. Like, I think I've got a copy, like Azure Striker Gunvolt on Switch actually has that, where you open it up, it's just completely blank inside. And I feel like that's just kind of a disappointing experience. A lot of our PlayStation releases are like that, because on PlayStation, at least, we wanted to not bother the developer. We wanted to not make them have to create art assets like manuals and stuff, because a lot of work has to go into a manual. But we felt like on Switch, the cost of goods is higher on Switch, so we're actually charging more to the customer than we would on PlayStation. So we want to make sure the value is there. So we want to make sure we have the manual inside, so there's something to kind of flip through and read, and we want to make sure that there's nice interior art or reversible cover art.
I think we're all really looking forward to that. And now, with this product, you did something different with the ordering process for Thimbleweed Park, and it seems to have been wildly successful. Why the change?
Well, it was really originally signed it?
I mean, yeah, we originally signed it at kind of a flat limit, which was 5,000 standard edition copies and 3,000 collectors. And that would have resulted in a lot of really angry people because we actually sold 13,000 copies, 10,000 standard and 3,000 collector's editions. So,
because when we did Night Trap, we felt immediately afterwards that we probably could have done that as a pre-order or even increased the run more. And we decided with our Switch debut, like, maybe we should try this. Like, let's not undersell.
The original initial point of it was to try to figure out where the demand was on the Switch. But the more I thought about it, the more it occurred to me that on Switch, if we kind of want to evolve and grow our business, we need to kind of embrace a more open model. Because what we're trying to sign on Switch is just better games overall, bigger titles, and we want to make sure that the people who want those games have a way to get them. They don't have to fight crowds and get angry about it, because we were seeing a lot of, honestly, attrition on PlayStation where longtime fans, they'll miss a release and then they'll just stop buying completely. Because we'll put a game out like Night Trap where so much outside interest comes in that the longtime fans can't get a copy, and we'll try to get our longtime fans copies if they reach out to us, but some of them don't. They just decide to, hey, I'm going to stop collecting completely because I'm so mad that I missed out on this game. And that causes this over time, like attrition in terms of how many people are buying from us, because those longtime customers are dropping off. They're not buying anymore because they're having so much trouble getting it. So there's this inherent problem with doing the limited number model where eventually you're just going to see a decline in customers instead of seeing a growth. And we feel like with open pre-orders and bigger titles, we're actually going to see a growth, which will only benefit us in terms of what we can sign and what kind of games we can put out.
So there are some people that believe that with this ordering change, you're stepping away from your namesake. How do you feel about that?
So our goal was never to create games that are rare. We were never trying to create something that was like explicitly like, hey, these are the rarest games on the platform. It was always to preserve the games, and the limited run size nature of that existed kind of as a means to an end in terms of like, this is how we're going to be able to move copies of Breach and Clear, which if Breach and Clear went out there as an open pre-order, I don't think we would have sold more than 400 copies because there was no draw. But I feel like if the only selling point we have for our games is that they're limited, they're not very good games. They're not good enough games to exist if we have to say, like, the only reason you want to buy this is so you can leave it on your shelf sealed and wait for it to gain value. We want our Switch lineup to be such that, you know, these are good enough games. Like, you're going to want to open them. You're going to want to play them. You're going to want to enjoy them. There's still going to be that side to it, I think, where it's like, yeah, they're probably going to gain value because 10 years down the line, somebody's actually going to want that game. But we don't want to have to be selling games based solely on the fact that, you know, only 1,200 copies exist or whatever, because it just seems there's so many people doing it now. It seems like hokey, because there's so many people that have come out. There's strictly limited games, East Asia soft, hard copy games, like super rare games, I am 8-bit. And I mean, I'm only just like scratching the surface here because there's so many that are coming about as well that we've heard about. So, I mean, there's going to be a point where there's like 12 people doing the whole, you know, there's only X number of copies shtick. And if we want to kind of evolve and set ourselves apart, we need to have kind of a different model and approach it more from, I think, a traditional business side. The open pre-orders are still limited by the fact that you've only got 2 weeks to pre-order it. And once those 2 weeks are up, that's it. So there's still a hard limit in terms of that thing. Like, we're not going to reprint it. I mean, there's this technicality that every game is limited, but the publishers are going to reprint that thing until Nintendo says, hey, we're not making Switch carts anymore. You've still got the assurance that with us, we're not going to print more copies of Thimbleweed. We're not going to do another run. We're going to do the copies that were pre-ordered, enough of an overage to account for lost and damaged items in the mail. So that's going to be like maybe 600, 700 copies on top of what sold. And then that's going to be it. There's going to be no more copies beyond that. So there's still this assurance that it was very much one run and done. So we're kind of still sticking to, I think, what we've always said we were going to do and what our name kind of stands for.
And I always felt, since people like to say that we're the original and that we're the ones that get the most scrutiny and like the one that people watch, it made the most sense for us to be the ones to first evolve. Because like if everybody's watching us and like hope, like I feel like it's on us to like change the industry and like to do something different. Because like you said, there's so many people doing what we do. I don't want to get taken out by the thing we started. Like if we kept doing what we were doing and making things limited and not growing, and there's all these other competitors, like we could get easily taken over by the fact that there's so many. And I'd rather see us continue to grow as a business and just, you know, stay around for as long as possible.
And I feel like there's this angle to it where, like, you know, we see this a lot on PlayStation where one of our games will sell out really fast, and then we'll have like 4 or 5 people saying, oh, limited run game sucks. I wish they'd signed with East Asia Soft instead, because East Asia Soft stuff stays in stock forever. And it's like, that's more of a matter of like their fan base is a little bit smaller. So because our fan base is so large, we get hit with a lot more scrutiny than I think other people do. And if we had put Thimbleweed Park out at the numbers we had signed for, you know, we would have just seen, you know, for
the same
like
thing.
weeks and weeks, probably just people spewing hate towards us because they had missed out on it. We probably would have been getting death threats. We probably would have been having so many hot take YouTube videos of people saying like why limited run games is a detriment to Switch collecting. it would have been an absolute nightmare, I think, if we had proceeded with the original model on there, because it just would have created this scenario where we just would have been burned at the stake.
Well, we hope that that's not the case.
Right now, because we did the open pre-orders, it's not. I mean, I think in general, everybody loves us on Switch right now because nobody's been kind of left with an opportunity to get burned. I think I saw one guy who was really mad that he couldn't get the big box edition and said he was never going to bother with us again because of that. And I was like, I mean, that seems like you're splitting hairs at that point because you could still get the standard edition.
Yeah, you can still get the game. You're just not getting the extras.
Yeah.
That phone book is really important to some people.
Yeah, apparently.
So you've shared some future Switch releases with everyone already, and I can tell you that we're excited to see Saturday Morning RPG, Flinthook, Mercenary Kings, and Slime Son. With the exception of Saturday Morning RPG, which we already know the pedigree of, what set the others apart as something that you wanted to bring to the Switch?
I mean, for Flinthook and Mercenary Kings, Josh and I are huge fans of Tribute. We were really big fans of their past work. Like, everyone on that team came from, the core team came from the Scott Pilgrim team at Ubisoft. And we've just, overall, like, they're people that Josh and I would, like, generally hang out with. We really connect. Like, they're good friends of ours. And again, huge fans. Like, their art is amazing. And for me, with Tribute, the thing that bothers me with their games all the time is that a lot of their games are critically acclaimed, but for whatever reason, commercially, they don't seem to do as well. Like, Mercenary Kings, however, is the only one that, like, on Steam especially, it did really well. You know them. But, for example, they came out on Switch, and, like, everybody loved it, but it didn't seem to, like, do as well as it should have. And Flinthook especially seems like a Switch game. Like, that's one I could see being released originally first for Switch. So these are games I want to, like, help Tribute you just because I want to own them physically, and I know that they would like to. And I want to see more people, like, know about this. I know with our exposure, like, our fans, they're going to learn about these games, and they're going to have a chance to pick it up. And then Slime Song was a game that actually James from IndieBox introduced. I immediately hit it off with them as well, and, like, we just became really good friends. And I remember playing the game and thinking, like, wow, this is a lot deeper than it initially looked. Because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's kind of like a Super Meat Boy, but with a little slime guy. And then I played it, and I was like, holy crap, this is really deep, and there's a lot of content in this game. Like, this is a game that I felt like should be preserved. And then, that's my take.
I mean, I feel like Slime Son is also right now console exclusive to Switch, and that's one of the things we've been kind of wanting to sign is a lot of games that are exclusive to Switch, but there isn't a whole lot yet. Like, if you look at the library, there's not a whole lot of games that are console exclusive to Switch that are also well received by fans and critics. So Slime Son was kind of a good game in that regard. With Tribute, I mean, if you look at, like, I announced that we're looking into PlayStation 3 releases last week, and if you look at that thread, like, almost like indisputably the number one requested thing in there is Scott Pilgrim for PS3. And the team at Tribute had so much to do with the creation of that game and the fact that that game is so good. Mercenary Kings actually shares the same pixel artist from that. Flinthook has a different pixel artist, but it's still very good art. Just the art in general in their games is very good. The pixel art.
It always has a Tribute look.
Yeah, one of the things to me that I feel like pixel games, like pixel art games, are very at home on Nintendo platforms. I mean, a lot of Nintendo fans like myself grew up with the 16-bit era, the 8-bit era, so, like, beautiful pixel art appeals to us. So I think those were kind of big factors in terms of the Tribute games being high up there for me and Douglas.
So you sort of led into this a little bit, and I kind of want to continue this line of questions. So as you continue to look at other titles, even though we don't have a lot of Switch exclusive titles at this point, what are the hallmarks of games that show that potential, show the right potential for a physical release, in your opinion?
So for me, the things that I'm looking for are kind of
retro styled.
I mean, I'm not just specifically looking for retro styled stuff, but one of the things that I feel like appeals to me as a Nintendo fan is kind of like this quirky charm, like really nice pixel art and then kind of a quirky charm. So something like Golf Story is a big one that I immediately saw that and I was like, that feels like kind of a Nintendo game to me. So something like that really appeals to me. But other things that I'm looking at in terms of signing games is cachet in terms of, like, critical acclaim and consumer acclaim, you know, whether we're seeing it requested a lot and whether it's kind of a recognizable name in terms of either the development team or the brand itself. So for me, things that kind of fit things that I would look for would be things like Thumper, Oxenfree, Firewatch, Shantae, and the Pirate's Curse.
Ooh, that would be awesome.
Mummy Demastered, things like that. Those are games that like would kind of check all the boxes for properties that I would look for and Switch games that I would want to sign and make physical. I don't know if Douglas has anything else to add to that.
No, I mean that's what I've been searching for, like games that are very just feel at home on a Nintendo platform, things that are unique, kind of like quirky, but like in a way that's accessible to everyone. Something that I can, I don't know, just look at and say I feel proud of this. Like I don't want any games where I just did it as a favor, like or games that I maybe did just because like I just did it just because I liked it a little. I want games that I like feel strongly confident about, that I feel like fans will love, games that Josh will like. Just things like we take a lot of advice now from the team too. So we're kind of like Josh said earlier, we're doing a very big kind of like reboot on Switch, and we're trying to get the best of the best.
Yeah, for me, it's just really like signing things that everybody on the team kind of unanimously cares about. Like going around and saying like, would you buy this to everyone on the team, and then seeing their reactions and their responses, and then kind of dialing back on anything that anybody expresses concern over. We've said no to more games on Switch than any other platform because we're being so picky about what we're bringing on. So it really is kind of a matter of finding what we consider kind of the best in the library in terms of games that are actively seeking physical publishing. Because, I mean, some of the games that are really good in the library, they're not really interested. So
the only downside is, like you said, there's not a lot of exclusives. So with Saturday Morning RPG and Flinthook and Mercenary Kings, that's already going to be an overlap of what we already done. But like we said earlier, too, we're trying to make
Mercenary
sure...
Kings we haven't put out yet.
Technically,
on PS4 and Vita. Yeah. So it's going to come out on Switch before it comes out on any of the Sony platforms.
Yeah.
But
we're also making sure, like you said, like all these releases are special. They're going to have manuals, interior art. We're going all out on
Mercenary
these.
Kings has a comic book.
Oh, yeah, the thing's sweet. Yeah, we're doing like better collector's editions. We're going all out on Switch and definitely making sure like what we do is like 100% awesome and great for the customer and us.
I mentioned Saturday Morning RPG earlier, and you've discussed the possibility of a sequel. So aside from the love of the era, what else are you looking for to get out of a sequel?
For me, it's just we made that game when we were all new to development. Like, if you look at my code for that game, it's absolutely atrocious. It's just like...
You just got feedback that it was okay.
Well, I mean...
Comparatively.
We're doing some ports to Switch of some other games that aren't announced yet that are pretty big. And my programmer that's doing that actually was like, hey, you know what I said about your code for Saturday Morning RPG? It's better than these other games I'm working on.
But then he was like, it's still bad,
But he was like, it's still bad, though. So it's not really that much of a compliment. So, I mean, we're talking like my code in Saturday Morning RPG, there'd be a file that would have like 5,000 lines of code. I wouldn't isolate anything into like its own classes. Like, it was just like, it's a mess. And that's kind of consistent across the board. Like, the game's fun, and you can really like feel that a lot of love and care was put into it, and it's reviewed well. Generally, like, we've gotten 9s out of 10, some 8s out of 10s. There's been some people who it hasn't quite jived with. So, I mean, it's like mostly positive. It's clear that there's like a lovable core there, but you play it and you can see like there was a lot of people building this game where it was kind of their first experience. And I want to correct that with the sequel. I want to build what we're actually capable of building now.
As you can tell episode to episode.
Yeah, like you can see an improvement as you're playing the game from like episode 1 to episode 5, that there's like a clear progression in quality, but there's still like basic issues where it's like, those episodes were still they were still utilizing code that was made in 2010.
So you sort of alluded to this, I think, on Twitter not that long ago, about the difference between episode 1 and episode 2. Just that alone.
Yeah, just like episode 1, we built as kind of the original release on mobile, which isn't available anymore, was episode 1 was free. So we didn't put a lot of thought into it because we were like, yeah, this is just going to be a free like side thing. We're going to try to hook people with it. But I let somebody else kind of write it. I let somebody else kind of determine the creative vision for the first episode. And as a result, it's a bit of a mess. It's a lot of like, hey, look, there's that's a reference to the Smurfs. Hey, look, that's a reference to this other thing. And it's like all over the place, where it's just references for the sake of references, which I hate. But you get to episode 2 and it's like, hey, now the references are more clever. The references actually have a point for existing. And it just becomes much better when you get to episode 2. There's a more clear story, and it kind of shows what our real vision for the game was. And I think a lot of people will play episode 1 for about 6 minutes until the blatant wizard reference pops up, and then they'll just be like, all right, I'm done. But I want to implore people to kind of stick with it beyond that. You don't even have to, once you get past the intro for episode 1, you don't even have to play it. You can drop back to the main menu, immediately jump to episode 2 and play from there, because the game's designed in a way where, like an 80s cartoon, it can be watched completely out of order in whatever sequence you want, because the continuity is pretty loose.
Wasn't 2 originally planned as 1?
Yes. Episode 2 was originally planned as the first episode. It's like you don't even really need a lot of context.
I used to watch you design that, and then all of a sudden the other one came out of nowhere, and I was like, what just happened?
But it's like, for the sake of the sequel, if we get to make it, we would have the resources to pay Vince more money for a larger, more custom soundtrack. We'll have more money to pay for better concept art. The team itself, like, my programmers are all working on, they were working on Bard's Tale 4 in Exile, and kind of doing this AA RPG game for In Exile. And the artists are now working on Wasteland 3 for In Exile. So they're doing art for these games that are either AA or AAA, depending on what you qualify them as. And my team is just so much better than we were back in 2010 in every regard, where given the chance to make another original game, it would really shine. And I honestly think it would end up pretty high in terms of reviews, because the design in Saturday Morning RPG and the gameplay was never what was severely flawed. It was the kind of lack of overall polish, because you could tell that the game was kind of built by a new team. So there's a lot of heart, there's a lot of love in it, and you can see that while you're playing. But the sequel would kind of give it a chance to shine. There's a lot of gameplay stuff that I would want to do in a sequel that I couldn't do within the confines of the code of the original. So I don't know. There's just a lot of room for the sequel to really be something amazing and special. So I'm just hoping that the Switch release finally kind of financially justifies Saturday Morning RPG's existence, so that we can look at that sequel and say, let's jump in and do it.
And just based on some of the preliminary talks, I'm really excited, just because it's a little bit darker without giving anything away, the way you're changing everything about it. I'm just excited to see it. We've already seen some concept art. It's looking good. I'm hoping that it's something we can do.
Yeah, and Vince Nicola is going to be doing some new music for it. That's going to take some influence from Ron Wasserman's Power Rangers soundtrack. So there's going to be some really fast-paced, heavy metal style stuff with Vince's synth stuff, because we're kind of making a move into more of a 90s aesthetic there. I'm dialing back references because I'm sick of people saying it's the Ready Player One of video games. So I'm really dialing back the references as much as I can for the sequel, kind of letting it stand on its own. And I really want people to see what we're capable of as a dev studio now.
I know I'm excited to play it. I can't wait to see it.
Awesome. Yeah, and one of the things I can tell you, my day job is a programmer, so I can tell you without seeing your code that it is definitely not as bad as you think it is.
Oh, thank you. It's still pretty bad though.
I have written and inherited code that is absolutely atrocious, so I can tell you that yours works, and that's good enough for most.
It's versatile, which is
the
good.
Only one that's ported to everything without any issues.
We've done other games that have had much better code in terms of being clean and organized, but Saturday Morning RPG started in Unity 2 and in 2010, and it's gone through 8 or 9 iterations of that engine now, because it's been Unity 3, 3.5, 4.5, and then 2017, and now 2018 or whatever. It's ported with ease to every platform. It's gone through all of those engine changes, and there's never been major issues.
But you're on 7 platforms.
Yeah, we brought it to. Are you counting Ouya and GameStick?
Yeah, those are 2 of them.
All right, Amazon Fire.
Oh, 8.
Yeah,
woof.
I mean, Ouya, GameStick, and Amazon Fire are all Android, but it's whatever.
Yeah.
It's been really versatile. So I mean, in that regard, it works.
And the only reason people crap on your code is because they've been working on such more advanced stuff lately, and you've been more focused on biz dev. So it's just if you had grown too, I'm sure they wouldn't be able to say much.
Well, I mean, my code was better for Breach and Clear when I was doing code in that. It was more mentalized. I actually used static classes where I should, and broke my code up. Oh. But for Saturday Morning RPG, it was here's the whole battle system in one script. Yes. Boom.
There's a bunch of nested if statements.
Yeah, like have fun figuring out where all these like
ifs,
statistics factor in. Yeah, a lot of ifs, a lot of switch.
You love numbers. Yeah, I remember you were all about the statistics on the other games too.
Yeah, a lot of random equations. I don't even remember what the equations are called that I use. Man, I don't know. Boy, different time.
In the past, Doug mentioned how difficult it was to work with Nintendo as an indie company. Clearly, the Switch has had a huge burst of indies and indies. So what do you think changed to bring this platform into an insanely popular indie console?
I mean, I can tell you, I mean, we have 2 Wii U games, like Saturday Morning RPG and Breach and Clear were both fully ported to the Wii U. So, like, we have functioning builds that, like, are 100% playable Wii U. But we never bothered to release them because getting through Nintendo's certification process on Wii U was such a nightmare. Like, Breach and Clear, for instance, failed because there was a 1 out of 10 crash. So that's like 1 out of 10 times they tried this, it crashed.
Wasn't it within 48 hours?
It was like within, like playing, I think it was, if you left the system on, playing the game for over 15 hours, 1 out of 10 times it would crash when you tried to go into a mission. And it's like, as a small team, how are we going to replicate soak tests like that to fix those bugs? Because, I mean, we have a small team. Like, I can't pay a tester to soak the console for 15 hours and then do that 10 times. I mean, 10 times it's going to take 150 hours worth of soaking and then hope it crashes, because 1 out of 10 times could also be 1 out of 1,000 times, or 1 out of 10,000 times. So it's like, it's not even guaranteed that it's going to happen with 50 hours. And even if it does, it's not even guaranteed we're going to get enough data out of it. So it was like, we looked at it and we were like, is this worth the like 500 copies that we sell digitally on Wii U at this point? Because it was like,
no,
Switch was about to come out like 5 months from when we were making this decision, and we were just like, no, let's just cut the cord now and just abandon the Wii U ports. But on Switch, like, everything is so smooth. Like, on Wii U, if you wanted to submit a game into certification, you had to go through like an FTP, you had to like manually arrange it with people through email. But on Switch, it's like, it's all through one website, which is so clean and so nice. It's like Nintendo identified everything that was wrong on Wii U and just changed it all and made it so much more developer friendly. It's incredible, actually, how far the difference is between Wii U and Switch.
Remember when we thought about just instead of being a developer on Wii U, trying to be a publisher, and they wanted like our life story and a resume?
We had to
almost like a novel. Like,
yeah, I wanted to apply for Wii U retail publishing. And in order to do that, we had to provide like this whole statement on like why we thought each product would sell. And I mean, it was just a whole process. And I was like, and they were like, honestly, you're probably not even going to get for it, but you can try to get approved for it. They were like, we're already focusing on Switch, so the likelihood of you getting through this is very slim. So I was just like, I'm just gonna abandon.
Well, they dropped all those Switch hits, and then let's just wait.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, I'm not gonna bother with Wii U at this point. But Switch is just so much easier for everybody involved, and I think it's just gonna foster a really healthy ecosystem. And Nintendo's being selective about who they're letting on the platform, so I don't think you're going to get stuff on Switch like The Letter. I don't know if you remember The Letter on Wii U for eShop, but it was this game that was like clear that it was kind of my first game project that took a couple days to make. That was all just kind of a really poorly thrown together Unity asset pack kind of stuff.
Well, like, I didn't go on the Wii U shop a lot because I saw games like that.
Yeah, because the Wii U certification was all very like functional. It was like, if you don't do these certain functions, if your game doesn't save, then you don't have to go through these 100 certification requirements. So the dumber you made your game in terms of functionality it utilized, the less things you were up against in terms of certification. So that had this negative impact on what was coming out on the Switch or the Wii U eShop, because you'd get all these games that like didn't save or didn't utilize like proper functionality because they were just kind of cheating the certification process to get out.
So you've alluded to this in the sense that the Switch sort of feels like a renaissance. And I think from a fan's aspect, I see it that way as well. Does the success of the Switch surprise you in any way?
No, not necessarily. I feel like Nintendo fans are always very diehard about sticking with the platform. And I feel like as long as there's kind of good content coming out for the platform, the mainstream's going to show up too. So you've got that diehard that sold, the diehard audience that sold, like, what was it, 10 million Wii U's? I mean, it's still like a couple million Wii U's sold. So you've got that audience, and now you're coupling it with the mainstream that caught on because out the gate, Nintendo had Breath of the Wild on Switch, which was insanely good. And then they had that like nice slate following it up, like Splatoon 2, Mario Kart 8, and Mario Odyssey. So like this first year has just been filled with heavy hitters to really sell the mainstream. And then they've done this heavily curated push with the digital side, the indie side. And I think that's all kind of coalesced to create this really nice platform with a lot of positive energy around it that mainstream consumers are really excited about.
Yeah, the success of the Switch doesn't surprise me, but Nintendo's like complete 180 to make the Switch and the way they handled it. Me, it was a 180 just because even if you read about Nintendo, like they're very stubborn on how like they do things, and it just feels like they've really like opened up, and they're a lot more like, I don't know, like welcoming of like indie devs and everything. It's just been really nice.
Okay, so where does Limited Run go from here?
Ouya physical. No,
yeah. We're actually gonna buy the overstock of Ouyas and just kind of yeah.
We should bring back
Engage, Game.com.
Yeah,
license that.
Work with Nintendo to get Virtual Boy going.
Yeah.
Wow.
We'll bring that.
All right,
back.
I'm not gonna let you bash the Virtual Boy every episode, man.
Oh, come on.
That was a great system.
I'll say Josh was really into it for a bit.
I have my Virtual Boy that I got. I admittedly I got it on clearance at KB Toys for $20, but I still have my Virtual Boy, and Galactic Pinball is like one of the best pinball games ever released, and I'm going to stand by that until the day I die.
But how much do you value your eyesight?
Well,
I thought you told me to kind of like mess you up.
No, I mean, it would hurt my neck because the way I'd play it when I was a kid, I would lay down on my stomach with my like head up to the stand because I would have the stand on the ground, and then my neck would just hurt so much from that position that I would like try to figure out like how else I could play it. So I would like the other way I would try to play it would be like lay down on my back and like put it over my face, but like it would constantly like slip and slide off. So I could never find a comfortable way to play it. So like I never played it long enough to like hurt my eyes because I would always get uncomfortable during the time I was playing it. So I'd get up within an hour.
It's probably smarter.
But I mean, like I owned like Vertical Force, Wario World.
Yeah, Wario World was great.
Mario Tennis and Galactic Pinball, and all those games are awesome. I never got Red Alert, I think.
Yeah, Red Alarm.
Red Alert was Command and Conquer.
Yes,
Red
Alarm. That would be crazy.
I could never figure out how to play that because I played it on like the demo kiosk at Target, and I could never make sense of what was happening in the imagery because it was like a wireframe Star Fox. Like for Virtual Boy, and so like if I remember correctly, there was no occlusion, so like you could see through the wireframes for walls, so I could never like make sense of what I was looking at.
Yeah, sometimes you would just run into walls for a while.
Yeah, so like I never bothered getting it, but I kind of want to get it in hindsight. I don't know. My Virtual Boy actually has like one eye on it that's dead now, so like I have to figure out like who I can send that to fix it because I don't trust myself to fix it.
Back to what your original question was. We'd like to get to Xbox one day, but it's been tough. We'd like to expand more into PC, do some more vinyl. We're doing...
I mean, it's just like really just focus on quality over quantity on Switch.
Yep.
Kind of maintain the open pre-order model that we can grow, build a bigger fan base, and just really grow as a company because me and Douglas want to still be doing this. We love what we're doing, and we still want to be able to do it in 5 to 6 years. So it's kind of just about building and fostering a community so that we can grow.
My final question is there any title, and I'm going to go ahead and cut you off and say outside of Phantasy Star Online 2, from any region, from any time or system that you absolutely would love to see ported, maybe updated to HD, and then offered physically somehow by someone?
If this was last week, I would have said Shenmue, but it's so I'm happy on that. But I mean, I would say like Skies of Arcadia.
Oh God, that's up there for me.
Yeah, Skies of Arcadia on Switch would really do it for me.
So like I've told people for a long time, like Yakuza 5, but like that's like something that technically could happen if I was thinking unrealistically and craziness, like Skies of Arcadia.
But I mean, another like
we could say
really obscure
Phantasy Star Online the HD because you didn't say we could say the first.
Yeah, I mean
one.
that would actually be. I would go crazy for the original one updated into HD. I mean, it wouldn't even be difficult. They have a PC version. I mean, the PC already technically HD. So you can just run it at HD resolutions. And Dreamcast games look really clean at that resolution. Phantasy Star especially. But I mean, if we're gonna like dig back, another game that I would love to see updated and re-released is Pulseman for the Sega Genesis. Not a lot of people know about it. It's a game Game Freak made before Pokemon. It's a Mega Man like that in the US only came out on Sega Channel, which I had for 2 months because I got it for free from a cable promotion.
I thought you were going to say Biofreaks. I was excited.
Biofreaks. War Gods for the N64.
That's an Adrian game.
I love that.
Really?
I would like to see a Body Harvest HD. That's a
Yeah, Body Harvest is
That's like Grand Theft Auto prototype.
So Space Station Silicon Valley.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a...
I don't know. Pulseman's my top pick. If I was going to dig out, like, if I was going to open an obscure well of like 16-bit games, I'd pull that one out. Skies of Arcadia, I think, is like kind of a token response. So, like, I'm going to get more creative. Pulseman's my more creative response.
I've got I've got a couple more questions, real interesting ones for you here. So I have to ask each of you, Optimus Prime or Megatron?
Megatron.
Only
because I like Galvatron.
Yeah.
Soda can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The soda can
That's my favorite toy.
Yeah. Isn't that like the only G1 Transformer Galvatron?
I think so, because I had Ultra Magnus without his suit.
Oh yeah. And you have a Perceptor's gun because it was up in the attic of the house that your dad moved into.
Yeah,
I remember we went up there to film something, and there was like it was on the ground. I was like, "Why is Perceptor's gun up here?"
Oh, yeah, that's when you made me search for everything too.
Yeah, because I was like, "You need to search the rest of this house for more Transformers." Yeah. Clearly, there was nothing there. I'm an Optimus Prime guy. I've got like a whole bunch of Optimus Primes. My favorite character is actually Ultra Magnus, but Optimus Prime is right up there for me. I like Ultra Magnus because there's a UK comic where he sacrifices life fighting Galvatron.
Oh, that was good.
I thought that was really cool.
I stole that from you.
Yeah, so I really like Ultra Magnus because of that.
Backpack.
I think to like most American audiences, he's kind of a bit player because he just kind of shows up in the movie and then dies as fast as he came.
Yep.
He kind of
rejects him.
Yeah. He's just kind of a weak character in terms of like the US continuity, but in the UK, Simon Furman made him like a real like star player because I think like the UK writers were given like really like good latitude in terms of being able to like make up stories for the movie characters.
They were dark.
So like the movie characters got some really good stories in the UK. So yeah, I'm a big Ultra Magnus.
All right. My next question is the last tweet from Agito Plus 9 was back in January of 2016. Is there any chance of getting the band back together for another crappy love ballad?
We have demos. It's just kind of like we're never like really free. Like we'd like to do it again, but it's one of those things that's just kind of out there. Like we have a drummer here. And like one day he was like, I don't even know how I drum to this. And then Josh and I mouthed what he could do. We're just like, it's just like this.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. It's one of those things like maybe one day it's not like nothing serious for us. It was just more of an outlet at this point.
Yeah.
It's like we have our bass and guitar in the room.
I've got my bass behind me. Douglas has his guitar behind him. So it's like at any point we can like bust it out and start jamming. But
we're like really busy.
Yeah, it's just like really busy. I started my video game company when I gave up on my dream of ever doing music professionally. I was never good anyways at music. So like it was easy for me to give that up. But Douglas kind of clinged on to it for a while and ended up joining on with me, I think, when he got to the end of that dream.
Yeah. When my last band singer went crazy. Well, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like I have a studio kind of built in my house, but like it's like I have my cello and I have all my instruments and I don't know. I keep saying I'm going to do something, but then I get home and I just want to sit on the couch and play and catch up.
Maybe you guys should try to score one of the areas of the next Saturday morning RPG.
Yeah, we could. We could do a random song that's just randomly inserted.
Yeah, it's. I don't have any delusions that we were any good, so I don't know. I think it's more of just at this point, me and Douglas playing music is more just kind of an outlet for fun because I mean we did that Agito Plus 9 back in high school, so I mean we started that in 2003.
Wow,
I think, or 2002. We started in 2002.
It went full in 3. We had we had already jamming in 2002 though.
So I mean we're talking like 16 years. This point, and some of the lyrics at this point in time, like
they're not PC.
Yeah, I'm not super proud of. We were like, yeah, we're gonna be edgy like Blink-182, you know, do some.
But we're not gonna acknowledge that we're Blink-182.
Yeah,
because I was like, let's cover a song, and you're like, no, it's already bad enough. We're so similar.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I always dreamed of like when I was playing music, I've always wanted to score a game. Especially after like
Chrono Cross, right?
Well, yeah, being a big fan of Chrono Cross and just like hanging out with Jason Graves because like he's nearby and like I like just seeing his studio and the does.
For context, Jason Graves is the composer of Tomb Raider, Dead Space. He lives nearby. He did our score for Breach and Clear Deadline.
Yeah, he's like the stuff he does, like he'll take like Dead Animal School, like, tap on him. He took like that old piano and like a razor.
Yeah, he was like for his like creepy music instrument, he has like an old piano he found in like a piano graveyard that he has like upright mounted on a wall that he like hits with random metal crap, like just like we'll take a razor and like scratch it and scrape it across the wires to make weird noises.
He like records animals, things I would never have thought of. That's really cool. I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
So one day I'd love to do like just like a fake soundtrack to something, or even like a small. But like again, it's time. We're really busy all the time, and I don't know. Like when I get home, I just want to like hang out with my wife and catch up on games. Yeah.
So, is there anything else that you guys would like to share with our audience?
I don't know. For me, it's just kind of letting people know that Douglas and I are both pretty easy to get a hold of on Twitter. If you tweet at our personal accounts, we're generally very good about getting back to you if you have questions about things, or if you want to make requests for games, or if you miss out on something and need help getting it. We always do our best to help people. We're very accessible and open about what's going on in terms of production. So if you have questions about where something's at in terms of being produced, we're open and easy to access for that.
We're in the Discords now.
We're generally very transparent about what we're doing. We try our best to be transparent about what we're doing. And anytime I think people think we're not being transparent, it's mostly just a lack of time rather than a lack of desire to be transparent.
Or sometimes I just miss it because, like, on Twitter is the show more. Doesn't always work for me.
Like we probably miss like 50% or 60% of the tweets that come to the main account because of the way that mobile filters the whatever. I've like turned off every filter that they have for tweets and responses, but I still miss people. And I think people like don't like it when we don't respond to them from the main account. But at this point, it's so hard to respond to everything from that main account because so much comes in.
Does your personal account do the thing that mine does now where it has like the request section?
Yeah.
Which I used to have mine just open, and then randomly one day,
yeah, like DMs are switched requests now, so you have to switch over to that and then accept the request. But I mean, I had to shut down DMs on the main account because people would DM there, and it's like I couldn't keep up with it, so like I had to shut it down because people thought we were shutting them. I was like, when we first started out, when we had less than 10,000 followers, we would respond to every tweet. We would respond to every DM. We would like be super quick to respond to everything. But like ever since we got beyond 10,000, I mean, it's just been impossible to keep up.
It's really hard now.
Yeah, it's like if I want to actually play games, I have to like lock my phone away and not go on Twitter because of the pace that like stuff comes through over there.
Well, we do appreciate you guys taking the time to spend with us and answer some questions and really just talk about what seems to be a great passion for everybody, us included. So we very much thank you for your time.
No, absolutely. We love doing this kind of stuff.
Yep.
Sirix, you got anything else you want to add?
No, off the top of my head, I don't have anything extra. I'm just happy that you guys have found a nice home in our Discord, and you've been answering a lot of questions. I was getting kind of concerned that people were going to start asking you so many questions that we wouldn't have anything to ask you in this interview. And I was like, okay, this is getting a little bit crazy for me. So
yeah, they thought I got on there because they were like, oh, Josh needs a break, and I was like, I don't really care, whatever.
Yeah. No, I don't particularly care. I like to answer questions whenever I can. There's a lot of stuff I can't answer. Sometimes just like, hey, tell me everything you've signed.
So it's nice.
Yeah.
Well, we're definitely not gonna ask you those types of questions here, but we definitely appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much for all of your time, and we hope that at some point in the future you'll be stopping by again.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.